take two. For those of you who missed it, I did just go live, and I was very, very slowly giving the introduction, waiting for Mayu to come on. And it turns out Mayu was having a little setup issue, but we have got to the bottom of it, and hopefully she will be joining me in just a second. Welcome to episode 2 of the Non-Native Teacher Diaries. Thank you to all of you who watched and commented on and engaged with episode 1 back on Wednesday with Zdenek. Really, really enjoying the conversations that I've been having with you and with him since then. So today we have a new guest. We have Mayu, and we're going to be talking about, her experience of being a non-native teacher, how it has affected her, but also particularly in regards to her following, because on Instagram she has a big number of followers, and I'm interested to see if, self-doubt or external judgment has crept into any of that, and just giving her a space to talk. So I'm going to let her in now. It'll work. It's coming. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well. Thank you. Before we get started, can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Perfectly. Can you hear me and see me too?
Perfectly. Excellent.
Okay, good.
Wonderful. So I was just saying on the introduction, there was a slight false start there, but we're here now.
Thankfully. And I'm sorry. It's just that this is the new office and I'm having trouble to set up everything. Like there's a lot of echo. I don't know which way to face, either the window so that I can get more light when I go live. I don't know. So I just decided to just use the ring light, and that's it. And just get into. And I'm sorry for the people who are here in your long introduction.
So anyway, the weather here in Edinburgh.
I'm sorry.
No, don't be silly. Don't be silly. Thank you so much. And I was thinking about this because we've never spoken, I don't think, briefly on DMs a year ago or something.
Yeah.
But you worked with Ollie, who was my coach for a time. You worked with him. So I feel oddly like we're cousins or something.
Same.
Ollie was our foster parents, but at different times.
Exactly. And I figured that anyone who works with Ollie needs to have a beautiful heart, because he's just a beautiful human being.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Absolutely. So Mayu, thank you so much for coming on and being part of this Non-Native Teacher Diaries series. As the name suggests, this is your diary. This is your space to kind of make it what you will, share what you feel comfortable sharing. Obviously don't share what you don't feel comfortable sharing. But before we dive into anything related to kind of non-native teacher stuff, could you just quickly introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Marjorie, and everybody calls me Mayu. Yeah, this is my diary, right? So
real name.
Yeah, so my real name is Marjorie. In English, it turns out that Marjorie is easier than Mayu, but Mayu, it's easier in Spanish. So I go by Mayu. And I'm currently living in Venezuela, but for 6 years of my life, I was living in Colombia. I've never actually lived in a English-speaking country for a long time, more than 4 months. No, longer than that. I am also a nurse, so
okay.
Yeah, so I think that my strengths are around helping people or nurturing. I don't know.
Amazing. I'm learning so much about you already. So we're going to talk a little bit around the topic of non-native speakers, native speakerism, anything that kind of is relevant to your life. But before we begin, I want to ask all of my guests, just how do you feel about the terms native speaker, non-native speaker? Is that something you're comfortable with? Is it something how do you feel about it?
Okay. Are we gonna wait for them to respond, or can I share my thoughts here too?
Yeah, you guys write stuff so my
Yeah, yeah, go ahead. Share your thoughts, because
yeah.
like if we're the two of us just speaking here without, interacting with everybody who's out there, it's like, come on, guys, we don't want to be speaking here alone.
Yeah, so
So,
yeah, just to give the people watching a little bit of maybe kind of inspiration. The reason that I bring this up is that there is, I mean, within the learner community, but especially within the teaching community, there is this kind of division between native speaker teachers and non-native speaker teachers. And sometimes the terminology itself, that native versus non-native, like I am versus you are not, can be unhelpful. So it's interesting to know what people think about this. But my our audience is not sharing their thoughts with us today. What do you think?
okay. Um, well, I have to say that it's even, how can I put this into words? It feels uncomfortable to speak about this. It feels like, should I be speaking about this here live before 110 people watching right now? But since this is my diary, then I will be saying what I think. So I have to say that along, oh, well, somebody said something, Pablo. So if you want to read that out. And
Yeah, Pablo makes a good point. He says the terminology isn't the problem. The issue is the impact it has. So yeah, I guess I'm as the native speaker, if we continue with the terminology for a bit, I'm aware that if that were a term you didn't feel comfortable using, I would want to use a different one for our conversation at least. So I think that's, but yeah, I think terminology can be powerful, but as Pablo very rightly says, it's the impact that it
yeah,
has where the issue comes from. But you
yeah.
said you were uncomfortable talking about.
Yeah, I'm a bit uncomfortable because I know that it can like hurt people when I talk about native speakerism or being a non-native teacher of English, or a native teacher, whatever, however you say it, it can make people uncomfortable as well. So that's why it makes me feel uncomfortable. Because in all honesty, when I started Mayu's classroom and the way this impacted my social media life was that I didn't want to go and share my face and share tips around teaching English or share teaching English in general, because I believed myself, like I believed that I wouldn't have anything good to offer because I wasn't a native, a native speaker of English.
Okay.
So like this impacted like everything. It was about to, like, it could have changed the whole trajectory of my life and my business, because I was about not like, I could have not started my youth classroom in the past because I felt that I wasn't a good enough teacher because I wasn't a native speaker of English. So
Wow.
that's how big it was
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I'm really, really sorry that's how you felt. I'm interested, were you articulating it to yourself like that at the time, or was that something you almost had to learn that you were thinking?
Yeah, I had to learn that I was thinking like that. And this is where I think the problem lies. Like, because I learned English while living in Venezuela, while living here. So the classes and the focus was you need to sound like a native speaker of English.
Right.
And the best teachers are native speakers of English. And this is the people to learn from. So it was natural that I thought that I wasn't a good enough teacher, because the whole, like my whole context was telling me that in order for you to be a good teacher, you needed to be a native speaker of English. So when I started my Instagram page, because my youth classroom started from the need of, like helping my family. Within the pandemic, my husband practically lost his job, and we had recently had one of our kids. And it was a very difficult moment for us because we needed the money and we were living in Colombia. And my husband, it was hard for him to get a job because of the pandemic. And I was like, I had a newborn and we had needs as a family. And my husband told me, why don't you just listen to your students because they're asking for you to come back now in an online scenario. And I said, I don't want to do that because if you are a teacher, like an online teacher, then you need to have online presence. And having online presence means that I need to go either to Instagram or I think TikTok. I didn't know TikTok back then. I don't know if it was even a thing. But I was like, it means that I need to have online presence. And that means that worldwide people are going to see what I do. And then all eyes are going to be on me. And I'm going to be saying that I'm an authority teaching English, but English is not my first language. So my husband said, well, I get it, but we need the money. And I said, you're right. Yes, we need the money. So I'm going to do it. And I started, but I didn't show my face. I didn't I started first doing kind of voiceovers and stuff like that so that I didn't need to show my face and show where I was from. I started digging deep into pronunciation because it was no, I need to, my pronunciation needs to sound better and I need to sound more like a native speaker, and then I can go live and then I can show my face. And I remember, I don't know if you know Chabi, right? Okay, so you know Chabi. Chabi, he was the first person to ever invite me to go live.
Wow.
And I said, I think I'm not ready to go live. And he said, let's meet and let's talk about it. And we met and we were speaking, on Zoom, and we were having these conversations. And he said, in order for you to position yourself as an authority and for people to connect with you, you need to go live. If you do this, then your students will see that it's not something that you just rehearsed and you recorded yourself, but it's that you can produce language easily because you do. And I was like, but Johnny, I'm not a native speaker of English. You are a native speaker of English. He was like, I'm not a native speaker of English either.
Had you thought that Chabi was?
Yeah, I thought he was a native speaker of English.
Gave just such a confident, I deserve to be here.
Exactly, because he was occupying the space, he was like, I own this. This is my language. I'm going to use it. And I was like, how come you're so confident and you're not? And he was like, because you don't need to be a native speaker of English to be confident. And I'm like, you're so right. Let's go live.
Okay, let's do it.
Exactly. And that's why he will be forever special to me. A very special person, because he was the first one to challenge me, to go outside of my comfort zone and go live and just show the world what Spanish speakers can do in English as well. And then as I started doing this, I recognized that maybe I wasn't the only one that felt this way. What if my students feel the same thing? That they cannot speak because they are in, they have an accent, or what if they feel that when they speak English, they're not being themselves, that they're trying to be somebody else? So I said, well, this seems like something worth exploring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I started exploring it.
And where has that exploration taken you?
Oh my goodness. Look, it has taken me to a place that right now I feel that I have more than just a business, because my classroom is a business and people know it, and people who follow me, they know that I offer lessons. It's just not, some tips here and there on how to learn English. It's not a secret to anyone. But it has given me a life mission, because I think, I have recognized all that is possible, everything that's possible to you. And I haven't explored the whole thing, but just stepping out of my comfort zone just for a bit. And I was able to, this opened up so many opportunities for me and for the team that works with me and for the people that work with me, like my students, a level of confidence, a level of knowing that they can do wonderful things. And not because, look, this is, I don't know, this is a cultural thing, but here in South America, Latin America, we always love when people speak in English because they're first world people, and we are, like second, third world countries. So it's like, oh, well, we don't have anything good to offer. Like, everything that's good comes in English. Everything that's worth listening to comes in English. And then you have to wait for people to translate it, and then you get it. And that's how we approach. So it's not being just a native speaker of English. It involves so many other things. Like, when you're a native speaker of English, then you're somehow better than the others. So if we call them gringo out of love, we're not trying to be mean or anything. It's just a way of, saying, oh, gringos, they're actually a good thing here. So when you say, oh, people come from United States of America, they come here, like, oh, they know a lot more than you. Like, they have the knowledge and you don't. You're like an empty vase and you're expecting to receive. And it's not necessarily like that, not even from the perspective of the gringo or the American. They come here, they want to learn. They know we have things to share. They want to speak our language because they want to connect with us. So it's like, it doesn't even make sense the way we sometimes understand the world when it comes to native speakers. And so it goes really, like, it has deep roots.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, it became my life mission to empower Spanish speakers to speak their truth in English. And of course, it has been a journey because I still love pronunciation, I still love it. And then I needed to discover the differences between pronunciation and accent, and why would I share some tips on pronunciation. And I always ask myself those things, before posting something or before coming up with my stories and sharing something about my story. Like, how is this going to impact, empower, and inspire others so that they can see that English is actually like a language that serves us as a bridge to connect people. And that when you want to speak, and I was telling my students that if you want to speak to somebody from Germany, for example, in our case, you speak English, and he's going to try to speak English, and he's probably going to use like a German English, and you're going to use a Spanish, Latino English. So everybody uses English to communicate when their first language is not English. Yeah. So it's only logical that if you have an accent, other people will too. So like, why should we feel so ashamed? And so like, we don't have anything to offer. The majority of us don't speak English. We learn it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really blown away by everything you've said so far. It really sounds like you have been on a journey, and to be your students now, how lucky they are to have a teacher. I'm sure you were a wonderful teacher before, but how lucky for them to have you now. And you are able to offer them now on top of all of the skills you would have had beforehand. And that's, I think, something that I find really important, and wouldn't necessarily call it a life's mission in the same terms, but something that really drives me is that when I'm working with non-native teachers, I know if they can, like, I've got so many conflicting voices in my head with like white savior. Yeah, there is an element of that, I'm sure. But like, if I can help a teacher really recognize that their voice is valid and their voice and that they have just as much right to be in this industry and to own being in this industry and to own their expertise, then students are going to feel that.
Yes.
Because the amount of times I have worked with teachers and they have said something like, oh, I tell my students all the time, it doesn't matter if you make mistakes, but I don't tell myself that. I tell my students, like, it doesn't matter if you have an accent, but I don't tell myself that. Lovely little messages of love for you, Mayu, coming up. And I really think that the coming to a really healthy relationship with your own English as a teacher you're in such a wonderful position because you have students and then they have friends and maybe they become teachers and they have students and it just ripples out. And what I'm hearing is that that kind of empowerment that you have found in yourself is now undergirding like everything that you are doing in your work. And that's really, really exciting to hear.
Yes, so these are things that I've worked with Ollie.
I could,
because
I smell some Ollie in this story.
Yeah, it's permeated in everything. Because look, it all started with questioning myself what it meant to have a perfect English. And like, was that even possible? Could I really do my best so that I could be best equipped to teach my students, so that I wouldn't feel like I'm being an imposter because I'm teaching something that I don't know 100% about. When I was taking my CELTA and they were doing the interview, they told me, Mayu, what's your biggest fear about becoming a teacher? And I said, my biggest fear is to be asked a question that I have no answer to. And then the interviewer told me, who told you you needed to have the answers of the world wisdom within you? And then it just, when he reflected back to me, like he told me what I was saying, I was like, yeah, it makes absolutely no sense. I get it. Now I get it.
Yeah.
You know? But it's still like, as non-native English speakers, we don't really know the extent that this belief has had. And I have to confess that the reason why I'm so passionate, I recently released a new workshop that's called Confía en tu inglés, which means trust your English. And one of our pillars in Mayu's classroom is mindset. Because I know that many of our students are able to accomplish so much, but they just think that they can't. And that's why they don't even try. So I tell them, go ahead and try it, because it's likely that you either, one, get the job, or two, learn from it so that you can get the next job. So whatever happens, you're gaining a lot. So that's what we have that. And I recently released this or launched this product. And the reason why I was able to sell it with like wholeheartedly, it's because I live this. Like, I tell my students to trust their English, because there was a point where I didn't trust my English. I tell my students to trust in their abilities, to take the challenges, to go further, to make mistakes, because there was a time where I wasn't able to do it. And I love the fact that I had Ollie, that I had my dad, I had my husband. I had this first student that I ever had who trusted me and said, I know you can do this. I just hope that you know it as well as I do. And I was like, I'm just here by faith, because you told me that I'm good at this, and I'm probably good. But Rihanna, I'm telling you 100% the truth. This is how it started. So I'm thankful for those people. And when I realized that they had such an impact, I first was really thankful that I had them in my life. Mm-hmm. And number two, I said, I cannot believe that I was so, how can I put this? Like I was so blind to this reality about me that I could do it. Mm-hmm. And I was about to sabotage this beautiful thing that we now have, that's Mayu's classroom. So I said, how about the dreams that my students have and the dreams that they are sabotaging right now, and things that may take them years, taking the long road because they think is the way to get there. And it's actually not true. It's all in our heads. And ask, when you as a teacher experience these things for yourself, it's a lot easier to put yourself out there, because you know now that you're on a mission. Like, you were that person in the past. I'm selling something to Mayu 5 years ago. And it just changes the whole narrative. And it's easier to come up to your stories and speak in English because you're telling your students to make mistakes and you're making your own mistakes as you're doing things. It's easier to tell your students, go and trust your English when you know you need the strength to go live with Rihanna, live talking about non-native teacher diaries. You know, like I need to gather up strength still. This is not something that just comes natural to me now. No, I even reach out for help because I now, because I've been trained, because I work with Ollie, I now see my mental blocks and I see, okay, so the reason why I don't want to release my pronunciation course is because I think that my English is not good enough. Oh, this is the reason why. Yeah. And then I say, okay, so this is how I can work around this, or this is how this is not true. I have evidence to say that this is not true. But it takes a lot from us as teachers, and it takes a lot in terms of you need to be willing to look in and then take action.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. I mean, for people who missed the very small comment at the beginning, Ollie is the mindset coach.
Yes.
And I have worked with, no, I think they will have caught it, but just to emphasize, Ollie is magic. Like the things he has not even like done to my brain, but helped me do to my brain over the past 2 years is just phenomenal. He's incredible. And he's influenced 99% of the work that I do now with clients, because that's what I do. And I try and help them help their brains. But as you say, it is an internal thing. It is an internal thing. And there are lots of stages. And I think, I spoke with Mary from the non-native speaker teacher just before this call, and I'm gonna have her on as a guest. And like, she was saying that when she first started working in this field, she was all about just raise awareness of the fact that you might be feeling this. And now she's kind of moved on a little bit, and and I think it's just a sign that there are different stages. And what I'm really hoping to get from the diaries is to talk to people who are at different stages, but also meet different people. Yes, the non-native speaker, someone just put Mary's handle in the thing. I lost my train of thought now. But yeah, to catch people watching at these different stages, because some people might have never even thought about this before and go, oh shit, I recognize myself in some of what Mayu says about her experience. Maybe this is something I need to go further into. And other people will be like, oh my God, yes, Mayu, this is amazing. Like, I've been here for 5 years, for 10 years, and I'm so excited that you're joining us on this side of the journey, because, you know, I've been through that. So I'm just really, really grateful to you for sharing that, your story. We're gonna wrap the conversation up. Do you have any final thoughts on this topic? Anything that you want to add to the share with the audience?
So I don't know if there are any of my students here. I saw a couple.
I think they are. They've all been commenting.
And I just want to tell them a few words before we just close the conversation. And is that when you realize that the reason why you were invited to that interview or to that meeting with native speakers of English, and for some reason your boss told you to be there, is because he thinks that you have something to share. And just look at the evidence around you. Because I received many of my students telling them, oh, Paola, I received many of my students telling me, Mayu, I don't know why I'm invited to this meeting, or I don't know. It's because you have something to say and people believe that about you. In my case, I didn't believe it about myself. And the only reason why I kept going was because I realized by looking at the evidence that there was enough evidence to tell me that my voice mattered. So your voice matters, and it's worth stepping out of your comfort zone, stepping out of that, oh yeah, you know, I can't do this because I'm not a native teacher of English, or because I'm whatever. I understand, I get it, but Thoughts are thoughts, and they're there. And it's your decision to let them in or just see them and recognize that they're not true. And then you move on with your life. And I know it sounds easier than it actually is, but it is the truth. Now, my auntie, she's here. I'm so proud of you, my little girl. I love you so much. She was the first one who ever taught me how to pronounce things in English. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So, hi, auntie. Thank you for being here. So yeah, that's basically what I would want to say. I know that at least most of the people in my community, they don't really get the full spectrum of, native speakers versus non-native speakers. No. They just like, oh, I'd rather have a native speaker of English because that they're the best teachers. Yeah, I've been told that this is the truth. And I said, well, you're a native speaker of Spanish, then why don't you just go ahead and teach people how to speak Spanish? And I'm like, because I don't have the tools. And I see. Then you see the point. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Very, very briefly, Mayu's classroom, can you give us like a 1 minute, what do we get when we join or when we follow your page? What's the vibe?
Yeah, so we are a language school for Spanish speakers, and we empower Spanish speakers to speak English. So when I mean speak, I mean we literally speak.
Open your mouth.
To open your mouth. We focused on speaking. And we just empower them and give them the tools to, in Spanish we say, soltar la lengua. But in English it's more like releasing your tongue.
Not as sexy in English.
No, not as sexy. I'm sorry. But in Spanish, I promise it is. So that's what we do. And that's why we have mindset and we have autonomy and we have real life English so that they get to see and experience that they can do it and it's something doable for them. And that's what we do.
Sounds absolutely phenomenal. And thank you, Mayu, for coming on this series. It's been a pleasure to meet you.
Same.
And I'm absolutely blown away by what you've been talking about today. So thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. This was a very special part of my day. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And thank you to everyone who has listened and joined us live and those who are catching the replay. It's been an absolute pleasure. I will be back next Tuesday, Tuesday, I think, with my next guest in this series. So I look forward to seeing you guys there. All right, Mayu, thank you again.
See you, Rhiannon. Bye, everybody.